All right, we're back, and it's COMP397 in the winter 2016 semester, and it's week 11, part 2 of our broadcast. We just finished talking about your final project, and now we're going to fix up everything we didn't get to be done on our mail pilot from last week. Let's take a look at that, or the week before last. It's going to do my own little recording, but then I thought about it, and it's probably better that I just do it like this. Okay, so, let's take a look at this thing. So remember that last week when we were working together, and I'm going to bring up COMP397, I had a project that I was working on called COMP397 Winter 2016 Mail Pilot Demo, right? This one. And it exists up on GitHub. So let's take a look at GitHub. And if you look at Centennial, and if I look at COMP397, like it looks like updated 14 days ago, Winter 2016 Mail Pilot Demo, this is the one that I want to look at. Right, so you can always, if you're not up to date with this one, you can always pull this one down. And let's talk about the stuff that's left to do to make this work, to get collisions going, to get sound going, to do all that stuff, because we need to get all that working. All right, so I need to open up Visual Studio Code. And for those people who are using Visual Studio, that's okay. You can still do the same thing with Visual Studio, is what we're doing here. You just incorporate this into your project. Okay, here's something that I've done a little different. I've kind of used a new coding style or commenting style that I introduced into COMP392 as well, where I can comment my objects with this UI coding style, UI doc, right? And some people may have seen it. If you're in COMP392, you would have seen this already because I've talked about it. But UI doc, what it is a kind of a best practice or syntax that we use for commenting that kind of produce comments that look like this, right? So an example would be you do /, double star, and then star / and that's your comment. And then you can do something like this. You can provide some comments at the top, some general details. And then what kind of object are you adding in? Is it a module? Is it a class? Is it, a method? Is it an event? What are you doing? And there's a syntax here to help you do this. Now, why this syntax? So you're like, wow, that's a lot of comments, like a comment header for each of my methods. Well, the great thing is it covers two things. It hits your internal documentation requirement, right? So that's part of your requirement for this, number one. And the second thing is, if you ever want to auto-generate an API, you can do that with this comment. It also gives you good code hinting for your code using TypeScript. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second. So here's an example of some. I've actually auto-generated some an API for this. And if I want to show you what I'm talking about, let's say I made this out folder, and I'm going to remove this thing for now because we don't need it. Here's what the auto-generated API looks like. Right, so I'm going to go to here, and this is what it produces, right? So if I look at my core game, it tells me my variables, my functions. This is auto-generated. This is not me like doing it by hand, making web pages. There's a function that actually goes through, parses through my my comments, and adds the details in here. So an example, if I want to know what my asset data variable is, then I can see that right now it's an asset. The variable asset data is actually an array of assets, right? And if I wanted to add more detail, I could put in some detail in here that would say something like asset data is an array of assets that holds assets for my game. And then the assets class, right, is a type of load queue, and I could kind of comment in detail every single one of these things. Now notice I haven't done that. But it actually is something that's auto-generated with something called JSDoc. That is the NPM module you can use to auto-generate your comments and your API documentation. So it's always good practice to start using UI doc syntax as we move forward in the last part of our semester. So I'm introducing it for COMP392 and COMP397 because this is the new style as we continue. And by the way, this works on Java. It also works on C#. It's a new commenting style that we use to create API documentation. So if you see it in my code like this, class means class, param means parameter, and this is the type, string, and so on. And it describes what these things are. So I'm going to remove my out. I kind of generated just for you guys so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to remove that. So I'm going to press delete in my out folder. And I'm going to look at a couple of things that I was looking at last day. So remember, I have my core folder, right, or my core file, game.ts. Here's my game.ts. And this is what generates, we're using what we've been using for a long time this state machine that switches between scenes. So I've got my menu scene, and this would be due Monday, right? My play scene, not due Monday if you're making something new, but you might as well add it in if it's assignment 3 and you're using your friend's assignment 3. I just won't be checking it until the next week, right? And your game over scene, your game end scene, again, I won't be checking your game end scene until later on, right? But you can certainly add it in because it's part of our structure. There's no need to remove it because I haven't asked for it. Okay, so that's what's due. This is kind of the structure we're using. This state machine pattern is what's built into our code, and I've introduced it long ago, and all I want you to do is keep using it. But we're going to add to this, instead of just having these 3 cases, we're going to have a case for instructions, and we're going to have a case for each of your other levels. So level 1, level 2, and level 3 is going to have their own case. That's what's going to happen here. Okay, let's get into the play state, because the play state itself is the stuff that we were working with last day. Let's see what the state of our game looks like as it is anyway, right? So okay, I'm going to pull up my terminal window, and in my terminal window, I'm just going to type in gulp, right? And remember what it's going to do. It's going to start generating my scene. So here's my menu scene. Whatever the menu scene is, all I have is a start right now. I'm going to click start. Now your menu scene for Monday is not going to look like this. Okay, this is not sufficient, right? You should have an instructions button. Okay, you should have your own buttons, not my buttons. Your buttons. These are my buttons. All right. If you hand me my button back, that's like my asset. It's my asset again. Build your own button. Download one from the internet. Make sure it looks good with your game, right? This is my button. Okay, so I'm going to click start. And notice that I use my mouse to move my guy around, and then as I fly into clouds, nothing happens, and I don't have a score, there's no sound, nothing, right? So remember how we did the everything from before. What I want to do, if I click start again, and if I look at my console, right, I've done some checks to see the distance between my objects. Let me just pull this up so you can see this thing. Here we go. So notice that I say cloud hit, island hit, and so on. And I've fixed the code we had last time, and I'll explain where the errors were because we couldn't find out the location of my island or cloud or the distance between one thing and the other. Right, so here's an example. So I'm flying my plane. You can see the top of my plane. I go over my island. I hit it, and I hit it not one time, 8 times. That's a problem. I only want to give my score once. So when I'm hitting my island, even though it's 33 times, I only want to give it I want to add my score once to my character, to my game. Same thing with my cloud. I'm hitting my cloud 35 times. I don't want to get 35. I want to lose 35 life, right? And plus, it'll make a sound that looks like some weird sounds, right? Which is bad. So please, that's not the right thing to do. But what it's doing is it's showing me that the collision system is working. Let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go into under scripts. I'm going to look at scenes. Under my play scene, this is my play scene. And you notice how my play scene looks like this. I had my clouds, I had my ocean, I had my island, I had my player, I had a number of clouds. Here's my number of clouds. And I also had something called the collision manager. And the collision manager is a class that deals with or manages collisions. That's all it does. So let's take a look under managers. There's a collision class that I've got to put into play. And this is what we were working with last week, just to remind you, like the week we were together last. So here's the way I've done it. I've got a start point and an end point. And the way I use collisions is I check the distance between the middle of my object and my plane, the middle of the colliding object and my plane, right? So I say something like this. If the start point, which happens to be the player X coordinate, and the end point, right, which happens to be the player Y or X and Y component, right? So if the start point and the end point, if it's less than the minimum distance, and the way we figure out the minimum distance is we say the minimum distance is half the height of the player plus half the height of the other object, whatever it is, cloud or island. If it's less than that, that means they're touching, right? That means I have a hit, right? If it's less than that, not equal, less than that, right? Then you have a hit. Now who's hitting me? Is it the island that's hitting me or is it the cloud that's hitting me, right? That's all I'm doing. And the problem we had last time was not that we weren't getting any hits because I wasn't taking into account the other object's center X. Is the top left corner of the screen, not the center X and center Y. And so you have to make it look like this. This is the fix right here, right? So your endpoint is the other object, whatever it is, a cloud or island, center X, the center of X, plus object X, yes. Sorry? it's going to be talking about just the top and the bottom. So basically half the height. So remember, because it's a top scroller, my game is a top scroller. It looks like this, right? For your game, if you're going to do a side scroller for assignment 3, you would have to check half the width of one and half the width of the other because you're coming this way, right? Not this way, right? For the most part. Sometimes they're this way, right? So that you can't do anything. It's, you're going to do the best effort. Why? Because if I do something like I want to do pixel perfect collisions in a 2D or even a 3D game, it's going to be too heavy on calculations, right? This method of checking the distance over and over again is actually cheaper calculation-wise than doing, is this pixel part of this thing and this pixel, are they colliding? Pixel perfect collision, bad. Okay, don't try and do that. And you might find pixel perfect collision code online. It's very heavy and it'll really slow your game down. All right, so now we know we can get a hit. This is what's happening. But you know what? We're getting multiple hits. I don't want that. When I have a hit, when my island is being hit, right, I want to be able to say, okay, now that my island is hit, it's hitting, I'm colliding, right? If my island is colliding, right, well, that means that I only want to generate one time, right, my the hit sound. So I don't want to make a hit sound like, yay, would be the hit sound for the island, right? I don't want to make that hit sound and then it's continuously making that hit sound every time I hit. Like, bro, yeah, it's going to do one of those because 35 times I'm hitting the island, right? So I want to be able to generate that somehow. That's one. The other thing is I want to add some sounds to my class. Before I do this, let's add some background sounds. For example, when my plane gets instantiated, I want to add a background sound. And if I go back up to my game.ts file, here's my game.ts file. Wherever it is. Here it is. Notice at the top where my assets are, I already have start button, restart button, back button, ocean, plane, island, and cloud, but I got no sounds. So let's add the sound assets in here now, right? So we can use the sounds. So I'm going to go into assets. I'm going to go into audio. I already have these sounds in here, by the way, in your project. If you download it from GitHub, you'll see that they're there. I want to add them in. So I'm going to kind of grab one of these, copy it, paste it a few times, right? And I'm going to add in my engine sound, right? My yay sound, yay, and my thunder sound, right? Thunder sound means when you hit a cloud, it's going to make a thunderclap sound, okay? So here's my engine, and it's not going to be engine.ping. That ping image is an image, right? It's engine.og. Og stands for og vorbis, right? Which is a open source sound format, right? You can also make it MP3 or WAV if you want to. Any kind of those sounds would work fine. Be careful with WAV. Sometimes WAV doesn't work as compatibly as MP3. Although MP3 is a proprietary sound format. Did I do it wrong? I did. This is yay, and this is thunder. All right. So now that I've added these assets into my asset manifest. This is my asset manifest. I've added in my assets. I've referenced the assets here in my game.ts file. Yes. Thank you. I'll be okay. Thank you for that. But you notice that you're under audio, not images. Selena says, yes, Selena. That's why I want to partner with you and I make my final project. Because you're smart, right? You notice these things, right? All right. Not like anyone else is not smart in the class. I'm saying she picked it up first. I got to give her first dibs on the bonus, right? So, all right. So assets audio engine, assets audio yay, assets audio thunder. These are all things that are just added in as my assets, right? This is good. Let's play the engine sound, right? When I make my player. Right, so my player is an object, right? So I got to go back to objects. And when I instantiate my player, here's my player sound, right? So here's when I'm instantiated. I want to play the sound. That means on constructor. When I make my constructor happen, right? My player sound, my engine sound will play, right? So let's do that. Now you can do it here, right? Or you can do your this player sound, right? I can do the player sound when I separate. I recommend doing it here. How do I add sounds? Going back to up here, if I go to Sound.js, I want to get some documentation, because we haven't done that here yet. I click Sound.js, my Sound.js library, right? This is on the Create.js site. Under docs, there's Sound.js. It gives me an example how to play sounds, right? So I can do something like Create.js sound.play and the name of the sound that's inside my assets that I've already loaded in, all right? So I could say whatever the sound is called, right? Or, and this is sometimes better, I want to add a variable to this for a couple of reasons. One, I can make it so that the variable instance, whatever the instance of the sound object I'm adding in, that's part of my player class, I can control. I can change the volume. I can turn it off and on. Example, when I leave one scene and go to the other scene, I may remove my player, but my sound will still keep playing, right? Just FYI, right? So I may want to mute the sound from my engine or my player when I go to the next scene. So it's good to have an instance of the sound kind of mentioned in the class. So here's my sound, which means I need a private instance here, and I'm going to kind of call this private, and we're going to call this sound the engine sound. Now, what is this instance, right? It's actually a CreateJS abstract sound instance. That's what it is. So CreateJS.abstract sound instance is what the type is. Right? I'm just telling you what it is, so you don't have to try and search for it. And this engine sound is just an object. It's just this is the type, right? So right now it's just a reference to that. What I want to do is when I instantiate everything, as soon as my plane comes into play, I want to instantiate this sound instance. And let's try this out. I'm going to say this dot engine sound, right, is equal to CreateJS dot sound dot play, and then the sound of the engine, which is going to be called engine, right, in the global namespace. Right, this is okay, but there's a bunch of other parameters here. Take a look. For example, the delay, the interrupt, if any, the number, so the delay, the offset, if it's going to loop. Do I want my engine to loop? Do I want to keep making the engine sound as long as my player is alive? Yes, right? The volume, do I want to pan left or right? All these things I can put in here. But when I have my engine sound, I can do it in my constructor, but I can also do it here. I can also do something like this, _engine sound dot loop, right, is equal to true, right? Like it's true. Now, if you notice what it is, if I look at loop requires a number, right? And number means it's a number of times it's going to loop. If I put a value of -1, it's going to loop forever. Right, so that's what it is. I have to make sure that the sound loops forever. So loop engine sound forever. This one is assign and play the engine sound. I'm just going to assign it first to the engine sound instance, this variable right here, and play it. Now, this is private, right? I made it private, but I might be smarter in this particular case making it public, because if I make it private, I can't access it from outside the player object, right? And if I want to turn the sound off, mute the sound, change the sound volume or whatever, I need to have control of it, which means I need to make it public. So let's rename this thing. So I'm going to rename, first of all, I'm going to change this from private to public, and then rename it from _engine sound to engine sound. So player.engine sound. So let me just rename this thing, rename symbol. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the underscore, because that's our convention for private or protected variables. Let's try that again. Happen. Rename. I meant to do this, Tom. There we go. So now it's renamed. Now I want to also move it from here into here, right? So that's the one thing I want to put in there. Yay. Okay, cool. So I've got my name, my width, my height, engine sound. Let's test it now to see if it plays. For me, notice that because I've done this, it should have already transpiled, right? So if I go back to my code and I refresh my screen, it says, oh man, images, engine sound is not there because what happened? And so it didn't transpile somehow. Somehow my code here, I got one save, do I have one save thing? Oh, there it is, game test. Let's try that again. There it is, save now, all right? And let's start the game, and you can hear the engine sound, right? And it's gonna loop forever. And yes, it does sound like someone made that sound, not me, okay? Someone made that sound. Okay, so now I want to do the same thing with the sounds. Now that I know how the sounds work, when I collide, so in my collision manager, when my plane collides with my island, I want to make the yay sound. So I don't want to just do island hit. I want something like this. I want to say, now it's only going to be done once, and I don't care to control it like I did with my player engine sound. So I'm going to do something like this. CreateJS .sound .play and then the sound of my what's going to play, which is going to be the yay sound, right? 'Cause that's what I called it. Yay. Except we're going to have a problem, right? And create.js.sound.play the thunder sound when I hit the cloud, any cloud, right? Let's see how this works now when I do it, right? Now, this is obviously not going to work properly. I'm telling you it's not going to work properly because it's going to go yay, 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 like that, or one of those kind of things, right? Because it's going to hit every time it passes through, one thing passes through the other. The condition for it to be less than the width, the height, the distance, the collision condition is always true as long as it's passing through, right? So that's why it's going to make that sound, and we have to stop that from happening. Neat sound, but not the sound I wanted, right? Yay. See? Not right. Yay. So how do I stop that? Just putting it out there, right? This is an opportunity for us to, if there is our objects here for both the island and cloud. If I go to island, notice that my island extends the objects.game object. Okay, I got this name is equal to island, no problem. Well, what I want to do is I want to kind of note if the island is colliding or not, right? And I also want to do the same thing for cloud. So let's go back to cloud for a second. So here's all my clouds. It also extends objects.game object, which means I can go back to my objects.game on my game object superclass and add in a is colliding Boolean. And I can switch it on and off. Okay, let's try that. So if it's colliding, I'm only going to make the sound once. If it's still colliding, don't make the sound anymore. So I'm going to say if not colliding, if not is colliding, object, whatever it is, then make the sound. But if it is colliding, then it's already colliding. So please don't keep making the sound until I'm not colliding anymore. Okay, make sense? The other way to do that is this. Wait till the sound is done before you make another sound, which means I can create a sound instance, wait for it to be complete, and when it's complete, then I can make another sound, right? But that's not accurate because I can have multiple clouds hitting me at the same time, right? So I want to hear the collision sound multiple times if I'm being hit multiple times. I just don't want it to make that really long, crazy, like almost like a mooing sound. Moo. Right, that's what it sounds like. All right, so how do I fix that? Let's go back into my game object and notice that it's protected in public. This one has to be public because I want to check to see if it's colliding, right? So here's the new one. So I'll say public. I'm going to call this is colliding, right? We're going to make it Boolean. And what I want to do is I want to set this is colliding variable to false in the beginning, so that we're going to initialize this inside my constructor. Again, I could have had an initializer here as well, but for now we're just going to say this dot is colliding is equal to false. So that's the default. When this thing gets created, everything is not colliding. Okay, cool. So if it's not colliding, then we can make a sound, and this is how I can check it. Go back to my collision manager now that there's a property called is colliding, and I can say something like this. If my object name is island and next thing down here, if my object, right, whatever the object is, dot is colliding, right? If it's colliding, well, it's not. If it's not, it's not. I don't want to see if it's colliding. If it's not colliding, that's what it is. Then make that yay sound, right? Make that yay sound. If it's not colliding, make the yay sound. If it's colliding, right, that's bad. So if it's not colliding, make the yay sound. So if once I come into here, I'm colliding. So object dot is colliding is equal to true now. So now it is colliding. So it's not going to come back in here, right? Okay, cool. How do I stop it? So I need to. It's turned on. I got to turn it off. How do I turn that off? We're going to figure that out in a second. Okay. Let's do the same thing for this thing. This is the same thing. So if not object dot is colliding. Wait a minute. I'm writing the same thing over and over again. If I'm writing the same thing, what does that mean? That I got to either move it or I got to make it into a method. If I'm writing the same thing over and over again, I'm playing the sound, but the sound is different. How can I make it wrap so that the game object tells me what the sound is? The game object is going to have a sound name, right? So I'm going to go back to the game object, add another property that says sound name, right? Whatever the sound is or the sound name is, and then I'll put that into the play, and so I can use one method to check to see if it's colliding. All right, check this out. Let's see how it goes. Well, we know it's colliding here, right? We know for sure it's going to collide. Anything that's inside this collision area here, right? Anything inside here, it's colliding. We just need to know what's colliding and what sound to make. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And then what to do if it's between if it's the island or the cloud. Okay, that's what's going to happen. Okay. So this is interesting, right? It's interesting. If my object is colliding, then we're going to do that. Here's the other thing. Do I want to make a global, like inside this thing, do I want to check to see if the object is already colliding? If the object is already colliding, right, first, before what type of object it is. I don't care what object it is. As long as it's colliding, I don't care, right? If it's already colliding, ignore me, right? Why? Because when I add points, if it's already colliding, I don't want to keep adding points, right? So I don't care what the name is, whether it's island or cloud, right? Get me? So really, this if object is colliding should be first up here. And then if object name is equal to island should be second inside if object is colliding. I want to check first if the object is colliding. Yeah. If what? But each cloud has its own instance, so that would work. Right? Each cloud has its own. It's a different cloud. It's not all clouds that have the name. It's this cloud, right? So it wouldn't matter. Okay. So let's restructure this. So one is I need to know the sound. I need to put that in my game object class. So again, go back to my game object.ts class, and now I've got my is colliding. I also need to know my sound name, sound string. I don't know what you want to call it, right? Let's call it sound string. So public sound string, which is a string. That's what it is. And I'm going to, again, notice that name, I didn't give it a default. I could have set it up to null, and the default is null, right? But if I go to my cloud, right, I notice that the name is cloud, right? But the sound string, this dot sound string, is equal to thunder, right? Hear me with what I'm saying, all right? What I'm talking about here. It's just planning, right? Here's my island. This dot sound string, right, is equal to A. So it's individual. It's inside the island class itself. Hey, going further than that, what about our player? Is that player? Does it player? No, the player doesn't extend the game object class, so I can't do it for my player. Our player is going to be slightly different because we're going to make it so it's an animation soon, right? So that's why I made it a bitmap and not something else. We'll talk about this. Maybe we'll have to change this later on to a sprite instead of a bitmap. Okay, but for now we're okay. So we've got our sound string. That means we can go back to my collision manager and check to see what it is. So let's restructure this code to make sure that it works for everything, right? So I'm going to go back up here. I'll keep the code the same way down there for a second. And I'll do this. If not object dot is colliding, if the object's not colliding, that's what I'm saying, then check to see what object it is, right? So let's get rid of this check. So I don't care about this piece here, because I want to do that on the outside. Okay, oops. And also, object is colliding is true. We're going to fix that in a second. So what happens when the object does not collide? How do I get that, right? Because the object is colliding, right? Okay, so this is the restructure that I'm doing. I'm taking these two pieces for now, and I'll take the space away in a second, and putting them inside here. So I'm checking if the object is colliding first, right? And then I'm checking to see what object's collided, island or cloud, right? So if it's the island, right? Post it in there. So when do I stop the thing is true, right? So underneath here, if it's colliding, either one of them, then the object, whatever the hell it is, island or cloud, is colliding is equal to true, right? Because it's colliding. So I'm not going to come back into this loop anymore. Only when it's not colliding, right? Now it is colliding. So I'm only going to come in here once so far. But when do I reset this back to false? We can do that. Any suggestions? It's kind of clear to me. Maybe enough for you. Well, I'm checking to see if the distance is the minimum distance. So I'm colliding here, right? So that means if it's not, then what's happening? Well, object is not colliding, right? happening here. So when the object is close, good, it's colliding. If the object is not colliding, I set it here, then make the sounds, check to see which one it is, add points, whatever. However, if it is colliding already, skip this. So only calculate it once, not calculate it multiple times. Okay? Let's see if this works. The other thing is so I play the thunder sound or I play the yay sound. Okay, so let's save this. And I'm going to save, just to make sure I'm going to save all, just to make sure we got that going. Let's see that it transpiles, so transpiled, right? 1641. Okay, so we just made it to 1642, which is pretty good. And that means that here, my menu scene, if I refresh and I go here, then, right, one sound. Yay. Right? Yay. Yay. See how I hit 2 clouds? Right? But it won't do multiple hits, right? It won't go yay yay. Right? So it only calculates it once. This is important, otherwise your score is going to be all screwed up. You have a weird score. Your score will be like out of this world, right? It'll go zzz, I can kind of zoom back and forth with my plane, and all of a sudden my score is going to go like 5,000, right? Because it's going to hit 35 times. Okay, how do I add score to my player? And where's my score being held, right? Because I don't have a scoring mechanism yet, right? So I could do it. Remember, I need some place to hold this thing together, right? Now my play scene is kind of my whole my game manager for this particular thing. So in my play scene, right? This is where it's happening. And I want to add score to my game, and I want my score to pass on, but only from my play scene, to my game over scene, so that my game over scene has a high score, right? That means that I probably want to make this a global object, right? Something that's being held in the game, not in the play scene or other scenes, right? And when I go to my first play scene, it resets the score to 0 and my lives to 5, let's say. Okay, that's what I want to do. So I want to reset the score and lives in my play scene, but I want the actual lives and score to be a global object, right? So I can access them everywhere. You don't have to do it this way. There's other ways to encapsulate things. You can also pass in your score and your lives in here. But I'm going back to my game scene to hit this one. All right. So game scenes. This is my global variables, stage, and so on. Well, here's some stuff that I want to add in here. One of them is my score value and lives value. So we'll type it in. So lives value is a number, right? And our score value is also a number. Okay, that's being held here in the game.ts file. Okay, cool. Now that we have a value inside my collision manager, right? Here's my collision manager. What I want to do is I want to increase the score value and the lives value in here, but I also want to initialize it in my play scene. So when I get to my play scene, let's go back to my play scene for a second. When I'm in the constructor, this is a great place, or the start, just like I set this cloud count is equal to 3, I could set up so when I first get into this play scene, this is the first scene, the first level, I want to reset my score to 0 and 5. I could do that. So I can say something like this, or sorry, lives value is equal to 5, and score value, right, is equal to 0. So my lives and my score value, 5 and 0. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to add my score to my lives and my score value. I want to add in stuff or subtract from it when I get hit. Okay. I need some place for it to display, and this is where I create my scoreboard, right? And in order for me to create my scoreboard, I need more objects in my play scene. Notice I have islands and clouds in my player. Well, I need something else in my play scene. There's got to be some private variables here where I can add in my scoreboard. And I'm going to call this thing lives label and score label. Let's try them out for size. So private underscore lives label, which is of type. And remember, I have some objects here. I have objects.label, right? And private score label, which is also of type objects.label. These are custom objects we created earlier. Okay, cool. These are my live label and score label. When did they get added in? I want the score to hover above everything else, which means I probably want to add it in later on, right? Like down here somewhere. Right, so there's my, so I have my, I'm adding my ocean, I'm adding my island, I'm adding my player, I'm adding all my clouds. I got my collision manager going, right? My collision manager should know about my lives label and score label, should know, right? That means before my collision manager, but after my clouds, right? So it's because it's a visible object, it's actually a UI, right? A user interface object. It's going to be hover above my clouds. I want to put my labels. And I want to do that here. So I'm going to say something like this: added lives label to the scene. Right? So my lives label is going to be on the left, and my score label is going to be on the right. How do I do that? I'm going to say this dot underscore lives label is equal to a new objects dot label. And notice when I do that, it needs a couple of things. I need the label string, the label font, the label color, right? And I also need X and Y coordinates and if it's centered or not. I don't want it centered, so it's going to be false, right? Because they're going to be top left corner in this particular case, right? All right, let's do this thing. So I need my label string. Well, my label string is the first piece I need, and it's going to be called score. So score or lives, sorry, lives. Right, so lives. And I also want to add in the lives value, right? So I'm going to say lives value. That's going to be my label string, comma. The next thing I want to add in is my label font. We're going to make it Consolas for now. So we're going to say Consolas, right? And we're going to make it also the size, which is going to be like 40 pixels or 20 pixels. Let's say try 20 pixels for now. 20 pixels, Consolas. There we go. And then we're going to add in the label color, which is going to be yellow because that's the color we've chosen. So for the theme of the game, so FFFF00. And then we're going to use the X and Y coordinates. Well, I want it to start at the top left corner of my screen with a bit of padding or margin from the top and a bit of margin from the left. So top left is 0, 0. So I want it to go over maybe 10 and down 10. So 10, 10 is where the X and Y value is going to be for now. Let's try this out and see if it works. So 10. 10, and it's not centered, the answer is false. It's not centered. And that's my lives label. Again, this is a custom object we created. We've created a lives label, we have to add it to the scene, and we're going to say this.addChild lives label. And that's where the first thing is going to be. Let's just do this and see what happens before we do anything further. See if this is the correct positioning. We'll go back to here, refresh the screen, start the game, and there's my lives label. And it's too small. Lives label, like, it's really small, but it's there, right? It doesn't change yet, but it's in the top corner of my screen. Let's go back, right? So obviously 20 pixels isn't correct. Let's make it 40, like I thought in the beginning, and 40 or 30. Let's go back and check it out, and that's better, right? Lives 5, okay? That's good. And I want to do the same thing for my score label. Now, score label is going to be a little bit finickier. How do I make my score label so that it makes sense? Score label has to be kind of adjusted manually. Get a kind of trial and error here, right? A little bit. So we're going to say, instead of lives label, we're going to say score label. And this is going to be score label down here. I'm just copying it so you can see it. Instead of lives, it's going to say score. It's going to be 40 pixel Consolas plus the score value, global score value that's going to be in here, right? Okay, cool. So this is my lives label and score label. It can't be 1010. 1010 is top left corner of my screen. So it's got to be to the right. So if I go right to the right, it's 640 pixels. I don't know how big my score label is right now. And I can't calculate it right now. I can't do a score label dot, get measured width. I can't do that because I'm generating it as I go right here. So I have to estimate. So I'm going to say, I don't know, it's not going to be more than 100 pixels. I'm making it up. Let's move it 100 pixels to the left of the right of the right margin, which is 640 pixels minus 100, around 540. Let's make it 500 to be safe. All right, so it's 510. It's going to be where I'm starting my score loop. Let's see how that looks now when I save my game. Refresh, start. Didn't work. It's not enough. Right? Let's go to, and I wasn't safe, even with 500. Let's go to 450 and see if that works. There's a danger to this, and I want to show you what I'm talking about. Let's, instead of the score value for now, let's add plus 9,999. So I can put any value I want in there. I'll come back and put that in as before. Because we want to test with the biggest value we can, right? And I don't think you're going to get to 9,999 in this game. But let's just say, right? So let's go back and fresh and click, turn on and see, not quite enough. At 450, even that's not enough. So maybe 400. Again, this is like where I say trial and error, right? Still not enough, right? So again, maybe 380, coming closer though, right? Because I want to, it's almost at the edge. I want to move it over 10 and maybe a little bit more. So maybe about 380, 390. So let's say 380. Again, this is what I'm saying, so it's not bad. It's not quite like this though, eh? Yeah, I'm just that perfectionist, so I'm going to move it back. I'm telling you, that's what I do, right? So this is like the trial and error thing. If you really want to know, you can always take a version of your game, put it into something like a fireworks, put everything down, measure everything properly, make it the right size, and then you have the exact position of your object. I'm not going to do that here just from a time perspective, but that's how you would do it. It's not bad. So I know that it's going to work now with this. I've already positioned my label. Let's put the score label back, score value. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to do this. In my collision manager, I want to change the text value, text property of my score label and my live label as I go. Right? That's what I want to do. So let's go back to my collision manager, and then we'll have a scoring, and we're almost done after this. Right? So collision manager. So now when I hit my island, I want to gain some score, right? So I'm going to say something like this. Score value, right, plus equals to 100. So give me 100 points. Award 100 points, right? And here, this one, I say, well, by my lives, if I hit my cloud, though, lives value, right, minus equal to 1. So subtract 1. Or you can also say something like lives value minus minus, right? So decrement your lives value by 1. So here is lose a life, right? Okay, that's good. It keeps track of the value, but now I got to increment or change my score label, and I'm going to say something like this. So, oh man, how do I increment my score label? It's bad. I have no access to my score label, right? Because my score label is part of my play class, right? It's not part of my my other object. So what do? I need to have a method that's in my play class that has update score. If the score doesn't change, who cares? I'm still going to update score every frame. That's the way to do it. So leave these alone. But I got to give a method to update the score somewhere else. So I'm going to go back to my play. Again, there's many ways of doing this. This is just an easier way of doing it. And notice that I have my start method and everything else. I need an update score method that I'm going to put inside my update. Right? Just I have my clouds, and I do my collision check, and after my collision check, I'm going to put something called update score, right? Because I check the collisions and I update my score. So how do I do that? I call this __ update score. I don't have that yet, but that's what I want to do. My update score method is a new method that I'm putting in, right? So I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say, I'll use the new formatting just for you guys, right? So I'll say, this is called, it's a method, @method, that's how you do it. And it's going to be called _update score, right? And it's going to return void, right? It's not going to return anything. And this is what it's going to look like. So it's going to be private. I got to make sure that it's in the private area too. This is in the public area so far. Private, and it's going to be _update score, right? There it is. And it's going to return, it's going to return void, nothing, right? And what I'm going to say here in my update score, I'm going to say update the score. So whatever the score is, just update the text value of the score. So I'm going to say this _ lives label .text, right, is equal to lives plus my lives value, right? And this that underscore score label dot text is equal to score, right, plus score value. So I'm doing that every frame. Okay, it's a very small call, and all it does is if something changes, it's going to update. This is a very brute force way of doing it. What I want to do is I want to say, if I have a collision, then do this, right? But remember, the collision doesn't know anything about play, right? Unless I pass play into it. And I don't want to do that right now. This just complicates things. Okay, so that's one thing. So lives label and score label needs to be called. I want to put this in the private section. Notice that this is the public section. And I don't have a private section. Here's my public methods. My private method should be probably up there. This is my first private method for my placing. So I'm going to kind of take this whole thing and cut it out, go up here, put it in, right? And call this private methods. There we go. And now what I want to do is, after I do my collision check, like I said, I update my score if I do a collision. Now again, the other way I could do is this. Instead of updating my score every single time, if I register a collision from here or here, then maybe what I can do is my collision check class can say collision true. And then I would only update my score if there's a collision. Challenge with that is there might be multiple collisions, like for example, one from my cloud and one from my island, and then you might get some weird scoring and death happening, right? Weird. So that's why I do it every time. Let's check this out. So start, right? Updates my score, 100 points. And then what happens when I lose my life? Oh man, that can't happen. What's going on? This is bad. Right? I want it so that when I go to 0, right, then I end my scene. And this is the final piece. So when do I check this? When do I leave and go to the next thing? I need to check to see if my lives are less than or equal to 0. Why less than or equal to 0? Because depending on how many clouds I get hit with at the same time, it could go negative, right, for 1 second or half a second, right? And it's too much. It'll show my score. I don't want that to happen. Which means inside my collision manager, right? Here's my collision manager. When I lose a life, before I leave this object, before I even finish my collisions, I want to check to see if my lives is less than or equal to 0. And if it is, get the hell out of Dodge. Leave the scene and then start the new scene. How do I do that? Well, it's like this. Inside my collision manager, I'm going to say another if statement. If lives value, right, is less than or equal to 0, then I want to change my scene. So change scene, right? And I want to change scene, but I want to set the scene to what the new scene is going to be, right? Remember what the methodology is for this. If I go to my menu scene for a second, you can see something very similar there. Here's my menu.ts scene, right? So when I click the start button, I'm going to change my scene, but I also want to set my scene to my config.scene. Whatever it's going to be. In this case, it's config.scene.over, right? So I go back to my my place scene. Oh, sorry, my collision manager. And inside there, before I change scenes, I want to set my new scene to the game over scene. I have the game over scene. I'll end. Oh, thank you. So this is the end scene. So show the game over screen. Let's see if this has happened. So, and this is check if lives. If player has no more lives, player has no more lives, right? So if I don't have any more lives, then it's good. Then go to the game over scene if that's true. Okay, this is some glitch territory, peoples. Just remember I talked about this. Here's the question. I'm leaving one scene and I'm going to the other scene. Am I destroying the previous scene? No, right? So theoretically, my sound should be going. I should still hear collisions. Seriously, all this stuff is still going to be there. It's not going to kill anything else. Well, hold on. Let's go back and see what my game.ts looks like. Because game.ts has all the logic for my switching, right? Oh, look what it does. It says, when I go from my menu scene to my play scene, I remove all children. I remove all children. Oh, that's good. Stage remove all children says, wipe it out, and then start over again, right? That's good. But even if I wipe out all my children, does my sound stop for my playing? What do you think? The answer is no, because it's being played in a static. It's a static object, even though it's a sound instance. As part of my playing, it's still a static object that hangs out. It might hang out in this particular instance. Let's check it out and see what happens. I'm just pointing it out to you so you understand, if you have problems, why it's happening, right? All right, so we're going to go here and start the scene. Bang, bang, bang. I die. See? This is no good. Right? If I go back, oh man, it's not supposed to go back to my menu scene. It's supposed to go back to my play scene again, right? Let's fix it. So how do I take care of that? Well, I want to take care of it inside my game scene, or inside my collision scene. How do I do that, right? Well, it's not just remove all children, right? I need to clean up some stuff, right? How do I do that? How do I do that? Well, I'm checking it inside my collision manager. That's a nice idea, Tom, right? You're going to say to yourself, but maybe this isn't where I should be doing this kind of stuff. This should be done within my play scene. I should check this every frame, right? Because I'm checking with my play scene, play has access to player. Now I could also do here inside, because my player object, I have access to my player object in here, right? Because remember, player, this._player is also has also been passed in, right? So I know what my player object is. I pass in my player object in the constructor when I created my collision manager. Therefore, I have access to my player. All right, so therefore I can turn it off. So before I go to check to change scenes, turn the engine off. That's what I'm saying. So I'm going to say something like this: this._player .engine sound .stop. I know it sounds silly and stupid. And you can say, wait a minute, that means there's something allocated for my engine. Yep. But it's gonna, I'm hoping that when I go back here again and play the sound again, it'll just start the engine again. Right? Let's see if this works. So this is one piece I need to change. So my engine sound has to stop. So turn off the player engine. Turn off player engine. Okay, that's the first piece. And the second thing I need to do is, I can't go back to the menu scene. I want it to go back to play again for now, right? So in my game over scene, or my game end scene, here it is, right? Where I click my button, it's not going to go back to my menu. It's going to go back to play again. You know, start over, play again. Okay, good. And the other thing is, I don't have a high score yet. I need to fix that up in my over scene. So that's part of my game, right? All right, let's check this out and see if it works. Refresh. Go start. So get some points. Right? Almost there. Die. In my end scene, no more sounds, right? Restart. Right? Back. Now I just need to pass in my value into here and have my high score. How do I do that? How do I put high score? It's my score, my last score, and my high score. Right? That's the thing I need. I need two more values: high score or last score. Your score is whatever it is. That's easy to do. I just take my score value, put it into a label, and make the label in the middle. Right? Let's try this out. And then we'll stop after this, take a short break, and then I'll start sitting with you guys, talking about your game for the rest of the day. All right? Okay, so we're almost done. I know it's long. Bear with me. Right? Then we'll have a complete game, and I'll put it up on GitHub, and you'll have everything you need. Right? So that you can always base it off this game if you need to go for the next piece. I would have loved to have this 2 weeks ago, right? But unfortunately, I couldn't do it 2 weeks ago. So that's you know, that's what we had, right? Okay, so my end scene is what it is, right? I have an end label, but I have to have a score label here inside my scene, as well as a high score label, right? High score and a score label. So let's get that done. So I'm going to have a private, put all the labels together. So I have a private score label, which is of type objects.label. Let's set them up. And we'll also have a private high score label, which is of type object stop label. Right, so we need these two things. We're making references. Our label right now is in center X and center Y. It's going to say game over. Let's move that up a little bit, which means that it can't be exactly where center Y is. So center Y, let's say minus, I don't know, 100, right? And we'll have to reset these as well. So minus 100, right? So that's where it's not quite in the middle, okay? And maybe even 100 is not enough, because if you think about it, each one is 60. It's maybe like 200. So like way at the top. So one of those. So 200 down from the center, 200 up from the center screen. Okay. Let's add in the other labels. So I'm going to take this label pattern, and I'll add in 2 labels. This is the score label, and this one is the high score label at the bottom, right? So high score and score. So this one's going to say high score, or score. Your score is your score, right? It won't be 60 because that's too big. Let's make that 40, right? So we'll try and fix this out. It'll be black, right? And I need to say your score plus score value, right? That comes from the global score value variable, right? That's okay. You can put that in. And that's not end label, that's score label. Sorry, otherwise I'm going to add this into the end label over and over again. That's not good. Grab this, put that up here. That's good. And I think we're good for this one. It can't be minus 200. Let's make this minus 100. And again, we may have to rejig this positioning in a second, right? And this is the score. This is the high score. Obviously, this is going to be called high score label. So high score label. Take this and put this over here. And this is going to be at the center. So my high score is going to be in the center. And it'll be 40. And it'll say high score, but I don't have a high score. How do I keep track of high score? High score. Okay, now this is the mother logic, right? If my current score is greater than my high score, then my high score is equal to my current score, right? That's what I have to check. But I need a high score value in the beginning, right? Which means in order for me to persist for the game, not for the forever, because I'm not storing my high score anywhere right now. Just for the game, I need to have a high score variable somewhere in my game.ts file. So here's my high score value, which we're going to, set to a number, right? And you know what? Now notice that we've initialized some stuff here. This is the only time that I want to do this here. I want to set my high score value to 0, just one time here. Right? So in my game.ts file, my high score value is set to 0. And what this is doing is saying that, well, we're starting off with 0, but we're going to compare it later. Okay, cool. Let's go into my end scene. Here's my end scene. And, okay, cool. This is all good, right? So when I come here, at the beginning, before we put all our labels together, let's do some setting, right? So we'll say set high score value, or check to see what my high score value is. Cool, right? We'll just do it. We'll say something like this. If our score value greater than, has to be greater than our high score value, then we want to say my high score value is equal to my score value, right? From the beginning, the first time we run through, it's going to be true, right? Because it's going to be greater, because my high score starts at 0. So the first time we play the game, our score is going to be equal to our high score, okay? So down in here, where we have our high score, we're going to add high score plus our high score value, right? And that's what's going to come into play here. Okay, let's test it. This is enough to make it work. Right here, the high score labels, check this out. We have our score label here. We have everything that we need to make it go. Now I think we have a complete game, right? Let's check it. Fresh start. So we get 100 points. What? Oh man, what the hell? Lost a life, right?
Yay.
Got that one too.
Yay.
Skimmed that one as well, right? Right?
Yay.
Got that one too.
Yay.
See if I can get 2 of those scores, right? So if I go, I can't. I'm done. The trick is not to go for the island if the clouds are on it. That's the strategy. See, I was gonna go for that. I'm gonna go for that one too. Couldn't get that one in time. I'm not gonna go for that one, right? No. It's too, so you can't get them all because otherwise you just, you want to die, right? Right? That's okay. I'm not taking as much risk. Oh boy. Right, so I'm pretty good. I'm getting up there in score, right? Okay, let's die now. So your score is 1400. This high score is also 1400. Why? Because, and this shouldn't say end scene, it should say game over, right? So I didn't do that yet. So instead of end scene, it should say game over. They're a little bit spread out too. I don't like how spread out they are. Game over. I think this is too high up. So minus 200 is probably too much. Maybe it's minus 150. Put them a little bit closer. So if this is the center, my high score label is the center. Let's move this up by about 80. So minus 80. And this will be 150. Okay, so 160. The spacing. Let's try it again. So we're going to see the same high score. So 100, dying. It's a little better. Let's play again, second time. Now the game is still active, so my high score will persist until I reset my game, like the actual web page. Let's try it again. We start. Let's get a bit of a higher score. So right now my score is 0. Right? Almost. Right? Now see how my play moves so fast? It's like unrealistic, right? Because it's not, I mean, we're just making our first iteration of our game. That's good enough, 600. 600, right? Okay, let's get a lower score, right? So 600 is higher than our first score, 100, right? All right, so let's get a lower score, 100 points, 100, 600, right? That works. Okay, so everything is functional. So we got our game, we got a high score, a low score, and you know what? There's a little bit of issues for me. I think this game over scene, to me, is a little bit, it's boring, right? I want to make it so that I see my ocean, at the end screen that's scrolling in the background. So it looks like my plane has been disappeared. There's no more clouds, no more islands, just the ocean, right? So how do I do that? Let's fix this up. So my end label, my score label, my high score label, where do I put my ocean? It's got to be before my end label, all these labels. The label is going to float above my ocean, which means it's going to go here. All right, well, we can get an example of this in the play scene. So here's my play scene, and I need my ocean. So here's my ocean. I'm going to grab this, and then go to my end, and put it at the top, right? So before everything, there's my ocean, right? That's the first thing. And then I want to go into my play scene again, and grab when I add in my ocean, like before, like this part, and add it in. Right, so I go to my end, and add that in right here. Okay, so here's my ocean, and we'll just format everything. Good. Now, there's one more thing we need. We need an update. So if you look at the bottom here, I update my ocean. It's inside my play update, and I want to put this inside my end, which is going to go over here. So there's my update. There's nothing in there right now. I'm going to update my ocean. So my ocean is going to scroll. I'm reusing an object that I've already made, but it's just going to be for a show. It's not going to be for anything else. Hey, I can even put this thing in my play scene, right? Scrolling, go to the next scene, or I can put some kind of plane that says play mail pilot or whatever it's going to be, right? All right, let's check this out. So I'm going to go back here. So instead of menu scene, it's going to say, mail pilot. That's what it should say. I'm going to fix this up in a second. So start the scene, whatever. Let's get some points. Game over. I like it. This is good, but the game over black on blue looks a little weird. Let's make it so it's yellow. That's our theme, right? So I'm going to go back to my end scene. See the little tweaks I'm making? Like it's nothing, but you have to make it so that you can see stuff. So it looks like it's going to be FFFF00, FFFF00, and I'm going to copy this value to the other labels. These are just cosmetics, right? Let's try it again. Got a point, and then I die. That's better. You can see that works a little nicer now. And you see the scrolling ocean. I hover over it. I still got my restart function, and I can play again. No problem. We're almost there. Francis, you had a comment? No? Okay. And let's make it so that I have the same idea here in my start screen. So my start screen is going to say mail pilot. So that's what the game is, right? And we're going to have the scrolling ocean in the front screen as well. While It's almost like we're copying, right? Oh, yeah, kind of are, right? I want to go to my menu scene, and in my menu scene, I want to change the menu scene so it says Mail Pilot. Mail Pilot. And now I want to add in my ocean again. So before my Mail Pilot, I'm going to add in my ocean. So let's go back to, I'll just use my my end screen to get that off. So I want to get this piece, reference to my ocean, and I'm going to go back to my menu, put that in there under my private objects. And I'm going to go back to my end screen and grab a reference to my ocean that I put in here. Same exact thing. And I can go back to my menu and put it back in. I could have made this as part of my superclass, but you know what? I didn't want to make my scene so pigeonholed. Maybe I'm not going to be flying over the ocean in my level 2 or level 3. Maybe it'll be over the some kind of dune or something like that, right? So this is where the ocean is. And then I got to do an ocean.update. So I'm going to go back to my, just to be lazy, grab my ocean update from one of the classes there, and go back to my start screen, my menu.ts screen. And in the bottom here, inside this update, put in that ocean scene. Okay, cool. Lots of changes. Let's see how this works. Oh, that's not good, right? I need to make that FFFF00, FFFF00. Right, there's Mail Pilot. It's kind of simple. I could have put a picture of a plane here, like an image of the actual Mail Pilot itself just sitting there, like the actual player object. I could have done that somehow. There's obviously things I can do here, right? Maybe some intro sound, like some kind of soundtrack would be okay here, and then play the game, right? But we got a complete framework for the game now. When we have our game over and our restart, we can keep playing over and over again, right? Where it's kind of got a complete value, where I can kind of play my game now, you know, as a framework. Okay. Let's die. Questions? Whole framework is there now, the whole Mail Pilot, and I would have loved to give you this. If I had another hour the last week we were together, I would have given it all to you, right? But you need all these pieces so that way when you make your final project, now you have an example of a complete working game that's a solution set for your assignment 3 by going this way, up and down, as opposed to sideways. Your sideways, if I was going to take Mail Pilot and put it on its side, which is really what I want to do, I have to change my ocean so that it flows differently, right? And again, my collisions will have to detect collisions from this way, side to side, right? Here's a question. What if you want to use your final project, but you don't want to do a side scroller, you want to do a top scroller? Is that okay? Yeah, it is. Because it's your final project. You can make whatever game you want, right? So you can certainly use Mail Pilot, right? The idea of Mail Pilot as your final project. But that means you have to remake all these things over and over again. Any other questions before I stop? And then I'm going to start sitting with all the teams that are here. Okay, let's stop for the day. I'm not going to do any more teaching today. Let's take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, I'm going to sit down with each of you guys. I want to see your concept. I want to talk about how it's going to be, and we're going to talk about the project a little bit, what you're working with, who you're working with. I want to know what your GitHub, whose GitHub we're going to use, whose Azure account we're going to use. All that information I want to have. You're going to put all that in your external document. And I want to see if you can get your external document done today, if you're in class, or if you're at home watching this. There are some people that couldn't make it today. See if you can get it done now while we're talking, as opposed to you know, waiting until Monday to get it done. Don't wait till Monday. Try and get it done before the end of class. We have time. We have another hour and a half, right? So let's try and get this done.